There's a peculiar silence that follows a man who has erased 20 million voices. Not the silence of death itself, but the silence inside the mind that ordered it. Joseph Stalin understood something about human psychology that most prefer to ignore, that the distance between protector and predator exists only in the stories we tell ourselves. And he told himself the greatest story of all. Picture a mind that sees every human being as a potential threat, not occasionally, not in moments of stress, always. Every handshake carries poison. Every smile conceals teeth. This isn't paranoia as illness, it's paranoia as philosophy, refined into something almost beautiful in its totality. Stalin didn't develop this worldview, he cultivated it, like a gardener tends to poisonous flowers. The son of a cobbler who beat him until his left arm never quite worked right, the child whose face bore scars from smallpox, marks that would never fade. Physical imperfection in a world that demanded strength. You might think this creates empathy, understanding for the vulnerable. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it creates something else entirely, a mind that learns vulnerability is the only unforgivable sin. He would sit for hours in his office, moving names on lists, not people, names. This distinction matters more than you might realize. A person bleeds, fears, loves. A name is just ink on paper, easily crossed out. Patterns emerge like rituals in the night. He works alone, past midnight. Papers shuffled, names circled, crossed. Repetition soothes. A list today, another tomorrow. Escalation follows, inevitable as breath. The transformation happens not in the moment of signing a death warrant, but years before, in the quiet rewiring of perception. Others see faces, he saw functions. Others heard voices, he heard potential betrayals. The most unsettling aspect wasn't the killings themselves, but the meticulous psychological architecture that made them feel necessary, even virtuous. He would host dinner parties that lasted until dawn, watching his guests get drunk while he remained controlled, sober, cataloging every nervous laugh, every hesitation. These weren't social gatherings, they were psychological autopsies performed on the living. Watch how he constructed reality. The enemy was everywhere because he needed the enemy to be everywhere. Without the enemy, what was he? Just a man with a withered arm and a face full of scars. But with the enemy, he became the guardian, the father, the one who sees what others cannot. The paranoid mind doesn't fear conspiracy, it requires conspiracy. It feeds on it like oxygen. He understood crowds but trusted no individual, could command millions but couldn't tolerate a single person's genuine affection. Love was more dangerous than hatred because love expected something back, something human, something he had methodically carved out of himself. His own son shot himself in a failed suicide attempt. Stalin's response? He can't even shoot straight. Not cruelty, something worse, the complete absence of recognition that this moment required feeling. There's a pattern in how he processed betrayal. First, the identification. Someone laughs too loud, arrives too early, agrees too quickly. Small things, meaningless things, but in his mind, these fragments assembled into certainty. Second, the observation period. Weeks, sometimes months of watching, gathering evidence that confirmed what he already knew. Third, the delay. This is crucial. He would often wait, sometimes years, before acting. Not from mercy, from the pleasure of knowing something the target didn't. The power wasn't in the execution, it was in the secret knowledge of upcoming execution. He kept photographs of the children of men he had killed, not as trophies, as reminders that he had been merciful, that he could have killed them too, but chose not to. This wasn't conscience, it was the opposite, proof to himself that he maintained control, that every death was a choice, not compulsion. The moral mind struggles with guilt. His struggled with something stranger, the need to feel his actions were deliberate, artistic even. Language became his scalpel. He didn't have people killed, they were eliminated. Not murdered, liquidated. Like cleaning up a spill. The words mattered because the words shaped thought, and thought shaped what was possible. A man who commits murder might hesitate. A man who conducts liquidations proceeds with the efficiency of an accountant. But here's where the psychology turns truly labyrinthine. He believed his own mythology while simultaneously knowing it was false. This isn't cognitive dissonance, it's cognitive multiplication. Multiple truths existing in parallel, each one real when needed. The revolution required it, the people demanded it, history ordained it. All true, all false, all irrelevant to the deeper truth. He wanted it.
Watch him age. Watch the paranoia intensify. The inner circle shrinks. Old revolutionaries disappear. Even the doctors become suspects, especially the doctors who might know his body's weaknesses. The most trusted aide could become tomorrow's traitor, not because they changed, but because his perception required fresh enemies to maintain its terrible equilibrium. He would edit photographs, removing the eliminated from historical pictures, not just from life, from having ever existed. This wasn't about rewriting history for others, he was rewriting it for himself, creating a world where the disappeared had never been real, where his actions required no justification because they had never happened. The mind that can hold this contradiction without breaking possesses a terrifying kind of strength. In his final years, the isolation became absolute. Sleeping in different rooms each night, food tasters for every meal, guards watching guards watching guards. The perfect paranoid ecosystem, self-sustaining and self-destroying. He had created a world where his fears were completely justified because he had made them real. Every person around him did want him dead because he had killed everyone who didn't. The night of his stroke, his guards found him on the floor, conscious but unable to speak. They waited hours before calling for help, terrified of being blamed for disturbing him. Even dying, he commanded through fear. His final moments, unable to communicate, watching people too frightened to help him, were perhaps the only time his worldview proved completely accurate. Everyone really was waiting for him to die. But here's the thought that should keep you awake. Stalin wasn't insane. His mind worked with terrible clarity, following its own internal logic to conclusions that required millions of deaths. He didn't break reality. He built a new one, brick by bloody brick, and lived inside it successfully for decades. The truly disturbing recognition isn't that such minds are diseased, but that they function, even thrive, by embracing what others would call madness as method. The silence that followed him wasn't empty. It was full of voices that would never speak, thoughts that would never form, futures that would never unfold. He created absence as deliberately as others create presence. And in that absence, in that vast silence he orchestrated, he found the only peace his mind could recognize, the peace of being the only voice left. Some minds build, some minds preserve. His was a mind that could only trust what it destroyed, could only love what it controlled completely, which is to say, nothing at all, not even itself. The most chilling realization isn't that Stalin was a monster, it's that he was a human being whose humanity turned malignant, not through madness, but through a perfectly logical progression of thoughts that began with fear and ended with omnicide. He didn't lose his mind, he followed it, step by methodical step, into an abyss that swallowed 20 million souls. And somewhere, in a mind reading these words right now, perhaps there's a faint recognition, not of him, but of the first seeds of that same terrible logic. The moment when other people stop being people, when fear becomes philosophy, when control becomes necessity. That's the real horror. Not that monsters exist, but that they begin as something else,
something that could have been different, something that chose not to be.